nuclear, and then we're going to show the scenario where the country has no nuclear power at all. And I will tell you, my first look at this is it's not attractive at all. It wouldn't be attractive to anyone, I wouldn't think. So these tools are going to be utilized and transmitted to the respective organizations. We're going to go around and visit every state. Currently, 30 states produce energy through nuclear in this country. 7 of those produce greater than 50% of the energy in their state from nuclear. So it's important to acknowledge and recognize it's a significant contributor. When you look at the way in which nuclear is utilized and the energy is transmitted across state lines, there's no clear-cut method for evaluating it, measuring it, and understanding what it really means. So in addition to if you take the 48 contiguous states, and only a third of those states are generating electricity, it doesn't mean there's not energy in the other states that's coming from nuclear. And that's something we're still trying to determine, what does that mean. So that means we're going to go around and see every one of the 48 state governors or administrations to assist them in understanding what does this mean for them, how to do this. We're doing this through the National Association of State Energy Officials, and we're making presentations to both them, NARUC, and also to the National Governors Association in February this year. So I will be, as this information gets completed, I will be sharing it with you in our public meetings about where we are, what we're doing, and hopefully we'll get comment back from you, especially as it specifically affects Virginia. The Environmental Protection Agency, and I'm going to come back to some of this in a moment, as you know, issued the Clean Power Plan in August. And this requires each of the 48 contiguous states, but not Vermont Yankee, and obviously not the District of Columbia, even though they think they were safe, to reduce the carbon emission levels by 32% from the 2005 levels by 2030. But the Clean Power Plan provides very little guidance. So when I went to the EPA to ask them, how are you going to measure this? How are you going to know by 2030 that anybody's met this? What's the metric? What's the measure? How will you know this? And I got this sort of deer in the headlights look. I said, what you're really telling me is you don't have a clue. You just threw out a requirement for everybody to meet, and it's like, good luck. And I asked them if they understood about how nuclear and its contributions, and I asked them about the other energy and environmental friendly activities and how did they get measured and crossing state lines, and there's no process. In other words, right now, they don't know how they're going to do it. So we've suggested to the EPA, we're going to show you how you can do it, because we're going to give you the plan we're giving to the states, and that should inform the plan that you would utilize to measure how they make it. Here's why I finally get to it. So I'm co-chairing the A&S Special Committee on Nuclear in the States. I brought in Pete Lyons. Most of you know Pete because I needed somebody with a big name to help me with this. And we're going to engage our members in state-by-state efforts to maintain this. And we intend to provide a consistent and standard approach for each of the states in valuing nuclear energy as an asset in their compliance with Section 111D. We've already started talking to several states about this. We've mentioned it to Maryland. We've also mentioned it to Virginia. We've talked to South Carolina. We've talked to New Jersey. So we're trying to start somewhere. Now, the state of Illinois has insisted we come to see them next, and New York has asked for next. So with the holidays and us trying to finalize this thing, and we're on the schedule, once this toolbox gets finished, we'll start actively going around to see each of the state governors or administrations next week, or next year. As I said, we're developing a toolbox tailored for each state administration. So what we'll do is I'll have a generic set of tools, and then we'll evaluate that based on what we've seen in each of the states to determine which tools are best for them given their unique conditions, how they conduct business, what their current asset portfolio looks like and whatnot. The draft toolbox 2015, final toolbox mid-January. Again, we're presenting to the National Governors Association, and we're going to personally visit every governor and his administration. This is pretty robust. I mean, it's going to be a challenge, but we're convinced as nuclear professionals and advocates for a science and technology that's so beneficial to the quality of life of humankind that we have to get out in front of this issue, because otherwise we think the vast majority of the leaderships of the states are reacting to information that's just not true, because there's lots of folks talking to them before we get to them. So as I said, I've talked to Virginia, Maryland, New Jersey, and South Carolina. We're now focused on Illinois and New York. We're going to be interfacing and presenting, as I said, on a routine basis to the National Governors Association and also with our congressional staff. We started talking to members of Congress on both sides of the aisle to try to get a bipartisan relationship to facilitate a recognition of the value of nuclear, and I'll tell you where that's heading right now. Okay, I can't go any further. Oh, I'm supposed to skip past this one. Okay. When I was president of the American Nuclear Society, I wanted to propose legislation to the United States Congress on how to value our nuclear power plants as national assets. But the A&S felt like that was beyond where they should be. So I waited till I was no longer on the executive committee at the end of June of this year, and I developed legislation myself. Who knew that an individual could provide legislation? But it can be done. It's a pain, but it can be done. So what I basically explained in this legislation, that after years of design, licensing, construction, and place operation at a cost of hundreds of millions of dollars in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we're prematurely shutting these plants down solely because they can't economically compete. They've done extended power uprate, they've done license renewal, they've done the post-Fukushima safety upgrades, they may have done design basis reconstitution. The plant may have replaced hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment to ensure that it operates more efficiently, effectively, and certainly safely. And yet, simply because it cannot economically compete, we're going to shut that facility down. A facility that today would take the same 8 to 10 to 12 years to actually design, license, construct, place, and operation, only instead of hundreds of millions, it would be billions of dollars. So what we're asking the Congress is to do is to consider them as nuclear assets and to provide some funding mechanism until such time as the plant could economically compete in the region in which it's operating, whether that has to do with low price of natural gas, a regulated market, or whatever it may be. We're trying to stay away from the word subsidies because we don't believe in them either, although we've been telling Congress if you're going to subsidize wind and solar, subsidize nuclear too. All we're asking for is a level playing field. We're not asking for anything special. This is currently in the Senate and House review. I've got 29 congressmen and senators on board with this, but I'm doing it by myself, and quite honestly, I can only go to see so many of them every week. And some of them I've gone out to see them where they live, which did not make them happy. So we hope for resolution sometime in early 2016 to actually get something that we could take to the floor, the House and the Senate. If I can get the continued support we're getting from some of the bigger names, so unfortunately I can't share right now, it is my hope that this will move forward. But we're essentially trying to get our United States Congress, our policy and decision makers to recognize that which they don't appear to recognize. And that is the significant value of nuclear science and technology, especially as it relates to nuclear energy. When we tell them, and especially the governors, I will tell you, when you go to a governor who's a politician, like it or not, and you tell them that it improves jobs, it increases the economic base, it improves the tax infrastructure both in the state and in the federal, that it improves infrastructure related to the local areas, and that it gives people an access to an energy source which is both environmentally friendly and base load 724, they say things like, no one told me. And so our next response has been, or my response has been, okay, but now you know, what are you going to do? So we believe that this is something we can continue to push forward. We're going to work very closely with the Consortium, because the Consortium is the entity and organization underneath the authority that has the capability to move forward in this mechanism. And there's a tremendous amount of things that we can all do collectively and collaboratively together to move things forward. So I'm very excited about the fact that we have this moving forward. I was the chair for the American Nuclear Society winter meeting here in Washington in November, and we had a chance to speak with a number of different organizations and I've learned even more than ever that no matter what you say, it never gets quoted the way you said it. They take a lot of things out of context. So one of the, I don't want to call it a magazine, I don't want to get it out, what Politico wrote that, Politico's first statement says, "Governors, stand by, Donald is coming." I'm like, oh, Jesus. So anyway, nonetheless, so that's my introduction to the governors of the country. And I got a call from Governor McAuliffe saying, "I've already seen you. You didn't seem that bad to me." Well, great. One person I'm impressed. But nonetheless, I think what it says is that there's a lot for us to do, and I'm hoping that if we get up and out and in front of these things, we can do what we should have always done, which is to be that voice of reason, that voice of knowledge, that voice of intelligence and competence and capability in the face of so many other voices about what nuclear science technology really is. So I just wanted to give you a sense of those kinds of things, and I think I may have jumped through them pretty quick, but to let you know these are the kinds of activities we're conducting. There are several other actions that are going on where we're continuing to inform Congress and other legislators, and I will keep you informed of those, and I can send those out to you. We should have something in the first part of January, so when we talk about our meeting schedule for next year, we can set up how to do that. So comments or questions, members of the board?
Is the toolbox on schedule?
Yes.
Mid-December is mathematically tomorrow night.
Yeah, I've already seen the first draft.
Yeah, okay, great.
Oh, yeah, I'm not, patience isn't a virtue for me.
No, no.
And I, look at Maureen, yeah, she knows me. And so this group we put together, I was really clear. Do you want to do this, or do you want you to do it? We're not going to pay you anything, but we're going to expect you to achieve what you need to achieve on the time base we give you. And nothing can impede that. Holidays, family are your real job.
That's pretty clear.
I think that was pretty clear, right? And then I made them sign something that said they understood. Of course, many of them were saying, I didn't really understand what it meant. But seriously, it really is, it is on track. We've seen the first draft and some other things. We'll be seeing the rest of it tomorrow. And the students have just done an outstanding job because they have the wherewithal to manipulate these computer codes or to make them all function in ways I couldn't even possibly understand. Sama tried to tell me, but she finally gave up. Yeah, so, but there's a lot happening, and I think the most important thing is if you look at what the consortium is doing with Marshall and all the other activities, and you look what we're doing as an authority, and you look at all the other entities and organizations that are beginning to get engaged and acknowledge and recognize this, there's a lot to be done. Now, understand, this isn't in the face of NEI. NEI has certain limitations on what they can do, as does nuclear matters. NEI represents utilities which also have coal, oil, gas, wind, solar, et cetera, et cetera. So they can't stand up and be just nuclear. Even though they're the Nuclear Energy Institute, they represent utilities. So this is something we're doing to try to fill in the gaps where that can't be done. In addition to which, Nuclear Matters is an entity and organization which will go out and talk to people, but they create no product. They have no actions. They don't go behind and create stuff. Well, you need someone that would assist the individuals, once you've explained to them the importance of it, in creating the actual product and tools they need to be successful. So that's the reason why we exist.
And that's the A&S role.
That's the, well, it's the A&S Special Committee role. Yeah, and I will tell you that Gene Graycheck, great guy from many of you know him from Dominion, when he asked me to chair this, he said he had no idea that I would take that scope and make it that big. And I said, why? How long have you known me? So he gave me this little bitty scope, which I have somehow manipulated and expanded, because every time we started to do something, it was initially supposed to be set up to make sure we were postured for new build. And my response was, we won't have any new build if we can't keep the current fleet. Ergo, we've got to focus on the current fleet first, with a new build focus secondary. Does that sound reasonable to all of you guys? And if I reach out and engage you in this, will you have a problem providing support, effort, like on Christmas Eve? Okay, good. Could you pass that around everybody's side?
Yeah,
But I'm really happy to say that there's a lot of progress happening, and I hope to report a great deal more right after the first of the year about where we're going. So with that, I'd like to move, if there are no other questions, to new business, Roman numeral 6, which is to talk about our annual report, the final review of it, the updates, and the vote to go ahead and submit our annual report. Chris?
So first and foremost, thank you so much to those of you who have submitted various updates and edits. I've included them in the various versions that I've continued sending along. The easiest part was just updating all of contact information in the appendices. So that has been a fairly painless process. So again, thank you for kind of staying on board with me through there. Thank you too to Marshall and April for putting together the consortium update to include in it. It was a really great substantial update that I think lends a lot more teeth to our report. Going forward, we really just need to kind of finalize the last few things, primarily a brief recap of the authority's activities from 2015 and a brief more specificity in the recommendations for 2016. For our nuclear energy recommendations. Seeing as how the 2015, or the 2015 report, sorry, highlighted the authority's stance on the Clean Power Plan, which is now a little different than I guess it was when this was originally designed. But outside of that, again, just need a 2015 update for recommendations for kind of the generic portion of the authority's report, as well as a recap of 2015 activity. I don't know if anyone has suggestions off the top of their head, or really what the best way to go about this. Don, do you have any?
Well, the first thing we need to do is to get a motion to approve. Do I have a motion to approve the final report to the legislature?
The draft that we have
The
here.
draft that you
I
have
was
in
going
front
to
of you.
say, it sounds like it's not
That's-
complete or final.
To finalize it, we need a little bit more specificity in the nuclear energy recommendations, as nothing has changed from the last year. No updates or edits were made from last year's set of recommendations. And I really just was looking for kind of a one paragraph recap of 2015 activities that the authority did. Happy to approve on a contingent basis. I can send around a proposed kind of recap, but really it's at the discretion of the authority.
I would just suggest the most important piece, I'm not as concerned about the summary and recap of activities, but the recommendations, it seems we might want to focus on for a minute.